The world stood still. Bells rang out across continents. Flags lowered. Candles flickered in windows. Tears streamed down the faces of millions. Why? Because Pope Francis, perhaps the most unexpected, transformative, and beloved modern pontiff, has passed away at the age of 88. But what you haven't heard are the chilling tributes whispered from behind closed doors, the secret letters exchanged between world leaders and the Vatican, and the successor's emotional response that stunned even the most seasoned clergy. This isn't just the story of a death. It's the story of a legacy so powerful, it continues to ripple across the world, even after his final breath. Pope Francis wasn't merely a religious leader. He was a global conscience. A voice for the voiceless. A force of humility in a world driven by ego. And now, as news of his passing spreads like wildfire across nations, people are mourning, but they're also asking deeper questions. Why was this man so unique? Why are tributes pouring in not just from cardinals and bishops, but from politicians, celebrities, activists, even former critics of the church? In this video, we're going to take you inside the final moments of Pope Francis's life, the extraordinary silence before the storm, the tear-filled tributes, and the global reaction that nobody saw coming. But first, let's go back. The final weeks of Pope Francis's life were marked by a strange, quiet shift. For years, the world watched as his health visibly declined. Chronic pain in his knees forced him into a wheelchair, issues with his lungs slowed his breathing, and complications with his colon limited his public appearances. Yet he continued. Unshaken. Determined. He preached peace. He advocated for the poor. He challenged the church from within. Even while the weight of the world pressed down on his shoulders, Pope Francis carried his mission with grace. But something changed. Behind the Vatican walls, there was a stillness. A pause. Meetings were quietly cancelled. Papal events were suddenly postponed. High-ranking cardinals stopped appearing in public. Whispers began to spread. Had something happened? Sources close to the Holy See now confirm that in those final days, Pope Francis was moved to a private section of the Vatican. No press. No fanfare. Just him, a small circle of confidants, and God. He asked for no ceremonies. No last interviews. No headlines. Just peace. One close aide described the scene as hauntingly beautiful. The Pope spent his final hours in silent prayer, reflecting on his life's mission. But there was one final act, a gesture no one expected. He wrote letters. By hand. Each one personal, thoughtful, and deeply emotional. And the recipients? A mix of world leaders, religious figures, and, shockingly, some of his most vocal critics. While the contents of most remain confidential, one leaked note sent to the newly appointed Cardinal of Argentina read simply, "Continue with mercy, not control." A quiet warning? A passing of the torch? Or a plea to protect the Church's soul? Less than 48 hours later, the world was blindsided, not just by the news of his death, but by how it was announced. There was no breaking news alert. No press conference. Just the soft toll of Vatican bells and a single Latin phrase whispered through St. Peter's Square. Pater Noster in pace. Our Father now rests in peace. And just like that, everything stopped. News outlets scrambled. Journalists choked up. Television stations interrupted broadcasts with 10 seconds of silence. Global leaders dropped their plans to issue statements. From Buenos Aires to Boston, from the streets of Nairobi to the skyscrapers of New York, people gathered in parks, churches, and homes to grieve, not just the loss of a pope, but the departure of a spiritual giant. In the slums of Manila, thousands of children held handmade candles and photos of Pope Francis, laminated in plastic to protect them from the rain. They weren't just mourning the Pope. They were mourning their Pope. The one who visited their neighborhoods. The one who kissed their foreheads. The one who spoke of dignity for all. Television screens across Italy went dark, then lit up with a single image, Pope Francis smiling gently, with the caption, "Grazie, Papa." Thank you, Father. But what happened next will forever be remembered as one of the most breathtaking public memorials in Vatican history. As night fell on St. Peter's Square, no event was announced. No one was summoned. And yet, they came. Thousands upon thousands of people, locals, pilgrims, tourists, clergy, silently filled the square. No music. No speeches. Just candles, rosaries, and handwritten prayers. Then, as if on cue, a gentle snowfall began. Not a storm. Not sleet. But soft, delicate flakes, drifting through the golden Vatican lights. Landing on the shoulders of crying children. Melting slowly into the robes of cardinals. In that moment, it felt like nature itself had bowed its head in reverence. But the most jaw-dropping moment came from the man stepping into Pope Francis's shoes. Cardinal Pietro Albini, the newly elected pope, appeared live on television, visibly emotional. Eyes red. Voice shaking. The world waited for his first address. But instead of claiming his new role, he did something no one expected. "I stand in the shadow of a giant," he said. And then, silence. He removed his skull cap, lowered his head, and stood in silence for 3 full minutes. No words. No movement. Just stillness. Viewers from around the globe were brought to tears. And just when the world thought the tributes had reached their peak, something even more personal emerged. A final voice message, secretly recorded by Pope Francis's personal assistant, was released by the Vatican. In a trembling, barely audible whisper, Francis said, "Tell them I loved them. Tell them to choose mercy. And tell them not to be afraid." Those words are now carved into candles, etched into stained glass windows, sung in memorial hymns, and quoted in cathedrals from South America to South Korea. But not everyone is mourning. For all his compassion, Pope Francis was also the most controversial pope in modern times. Why? Because he changed things. From the start, he pushed the Church to confront difficult questions. In 2013, just months after becoming pope, he made a statement that shook the Vatican to its core. "If someone is gay and he searches for the Lord and has good will, who am I to judge?" To progressives and marginalized Catholics, it was revolutionary. To conservatives, it was borderline heresy. But Francis didn't back down. He refused to live in the lavish apostolic palace. Instead, he chose a humble guest house. He sold off church assets. He publicly condemned the idolatry of money. And that's when the backlash began. Behind the scenes, tension simmered. Factions within the Vatican, particularly in the Roman Curia, were furious. Anonymous letters were leaked. Retired bishops gave cryptic interviews. At one point, a former Vatican ambassador even publicly called for Pope Francis to resign. But Francis stood firm. In fact, his rumored words on his deathbed now circulate worldwide. "If I'm crucified for standing with the people, so be it." He challenged internal corruption. He opened new roles to women, appointing them to positions of real Vatican authority. He re-examined the roles of deaconesses and expanded opportunities for female leadership. He fought hard against sexual abuse in the Church. He met with survivors. He launched investigations. He defrocked guilty clergy. And although critics argue he didn't do enough, others say no pope has done more. In 2018, after initially defending a Chilean bishop accused of abuse, Pope Francis made a stunning reversal. He apologized. He accepted mass resignations. And he faced the scandal head-on. That moment, for many, proved his humanity. For others, it revealed the near-impossible task he carried. So what does his legacy really mean? It means he left behind a church transformed and divided. On one side, a younger generation of Catholics, inspired by his humility, his empathy, and his fight for justice. On the other, traditionalists who fear that Pope Francis loosened doctrine, opening doors they believe should remain shut. And now, all eyes are on his successor, Pope Petro I. Will he continue Francis's legacy of radical mercy and reform? Or will he steer the Church back toward conservatism? One thing is certain, the Church will never be the same. Pope Francis didn't just change policy. He changed hearts. He didn't just preach doctrine. He lived it, with his feet in the dirt, with the poor, with the forgotten. And as the world says goodbye to this once-in-a-generation spiritual leader, one message echoes louder than any other. Choose mercy. Love boldly. And never be afraid. Rest in peace, Pope Francis. The world will never forget you.